The Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill posting her support of the law on X, formerly Twitter, saying the 10 Commandments are pretty simple. Don't kill, steal, cheat on your wife, but they're also important on our country's foundations. Moses, who you may recall brought the 10 Commandments down from Mount Sinai, appears 8 times in carvings that ring the United States Supreme Court Great Hall ceiling. I look forward to defending the law. The Louisiana AG joins us now. AG Murrill, thanks so much for taking the time. You will likely face those legal challenges, and I know we can get to that in just a bit. But first, we'll dive into what this law requires. Again, Sean was saying a poster size, an 11 by 14 with the commandments, the central focus of it, large and easily readable font, paired with a 4-paragraph context statement describing how the commandments were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. AG, why do you think this law is so important?
I think that there's certainly been a lot of pushback against taking out any kind of morality from our public school system. And so I think it's partly a response to that, but it's also a response to Supreme Court precedent that permits the 10 Commandments to be posted within certain contexts. And I think our legislature is trying to thread that needle.
The ACLU of Louisiana, along with 2 other organizations, announced a planned lawsuit just hours after the governor signed that bill. We have a quote here. It says this: "The law violates the First Amendment's promise to separation of church and state and will result in unconstitutional religious coercion of students who are legally required to attend school and are thus a captive audience for school-sponsored religious messages." Here. Can you respond to that? Perhaps why now? Obviously, there would be challenges to this, but moving forward with it, for the governor to sign it, already seeing rebuttal there. What is your response to that statement?
Well, I think it's not entirely true, and they know it. I mean, it's a nice talking point, but there has been no lawsuit yet, and the law itself acknowledges Supreme Court precedent, directs that there be a context statement, and that part of it hasn't been written yet. So I think that some of this still has to play out in terms of how the law is actually applied. I certainly plan to give some guidance to our school systems so that they will know where the lines kind of are drawn under current Supreme Court precedent, and we'll wait and see if we get sued.
Before a lawsuit might even come forward, there's obviously a lot of opinions circulating around this decision in Louisiana. One guest on CNN sharing this take on the news of the 10 Commandments being placed in Louisiana classrooms. Here's that.
What would you say if your child had to go to a classroom in which the 5 pillars of Islam were required to be on the wall? How would you feel?
Again, this is not about the 5 pillars of Islam. This bill specifically states the 10 Commandments. It is a historical document.
I'm presenting you with a hypothetical that would help you put yourself in the shoes of someone you may not understand and their point of view. How would you feel if you walked into a classroom and something you didn't believe in was required to be on the wall?
And so, again, you see what's playing out there. Lauren Ventrella answering questions, but the nature of the questions coming from the host on CNN, if you just wanted to respond to that.
Look, there are people who don't believe in our Constitution, and we can post that on the wall. So I just think that the argument isn't really on point. This is a document that has historical roots in our country's foundations. The United States Supreme Court has recognized that. I think the challenge for us is to make sure that we present it in the right context so that it can be upheld as constitutional, and we'll pursue it and defend the law. But I don't think there's anything that's facially unconstitutional about the law. And I understand that it's created quite a furor. In fact, it's a little surprising at the kind of explosion over a little law that we passed that certainly can be constitutionally applied, and the United States Supreme Court has already recognized that it can be constitutionally applied.
America was built upon Christian values itself, according to the founding fathers. I wanted to bring this up, and perhaps maybe it's not a legal argument, right? But maybe it's an argument amongst parents. It is June. This is Pride Month, celebrated by many across the country. We know if you walk just about in any school, any classroom, I've done it with my own nephews. I've been in their school. I see trans flags, pride flags all over. There doesn't seem to be any controversy with that. The moment you start talking about putting anything biblical again back into the classroom, there seems to be major pushback. Again, I get maybe not a legal argument here, but there are parents that are seeing it this way. You're allowed to celebrate this. Perhaps you don't believe in Pride Month, Trans Month, or the flags that represent that, about that ideology. Can you talk to that point for parents that may not understand what's happening in their schools?
You know, I think there is a legal point here, and it's a legal conversation about what role religion played in the foundations of our country, what role these moral values play in the legal structures that are operational in every one of our states. You can look at the east side of the United States Supreme Court building and find Moses holding the tablets that represent the Ten Commandments. So it's a great time to have this conversation. And I think it's a really good prompt for that conversation. And it's a good counterpoint to some of these other messages that are permitted to be discussed in school and sometimes encouraged.
Yeah, like we said, we'll wait and see the counter lawsuit. That's expected. The governor even said it. He said, I can't wait to be sued to defend it. But perhaps it could make it all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Maybe even next summer's opinion season, we could be following it. As we know, the Supreme Court makeup is different this time than maybe prior cases having to do with religion in the classroom discussions. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill joining us. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.